Good evening and welcome to National Broadcasting News India. Tonight's news update. Here are the top stories. Trump signs sweeping tariffs on 92 countries. An executive order introduced tariffs ranging from 10% to 41% across multiple nations, including Canada, India, Brazil, Taiwan, and the EU, with Canada targeted at 35% and Switzerland at 39%. These take effect from August 7 and triggered immediate global market volatility. US dollar surges, futures decline. The dollar edged toward its first monthly gain of 2025. Meanwhile, S&P, Dow, and Nasdaq futures fell nearly 1% as investors reacted to tariff risks. Big tech earnings propel markets despite macro clouds. Microsoft surged 8% pre-market and Meta gained nearly 12%, driven by strong cloud and ad revenue as markets digest inflation data and Fed policy signals. Court scrutiny of Trump's tariff powers intensifies. A U.S. appeals court is reviewing the legality of Trump's board tariffs authority under emergency powers, challenging whether Congress's trade prerogatives were overridden. European stocks dropped as U.S. tariff tensions mount. Equities in Europe slid to their lowest in 3 weeks, especially healthcare shares amid concerns over new U.S. tariffs. EU wine and spirits face 15% US tariff. Starting August 1st, wine and spirits imports into the US will incur a 15% tariff unless exemptions are secured during ongoing autumn trade talks. EU regulators target big tech acquisition practices. Ongoing EU antitrust officials flagged concerns over acqui-hire deals by large tech firms, with efforts underway to scrutinize non-competitive consolidation. Spain's manufacturing growth accelerates in July. A national PMI showed Spain's factory output and orders rising at the fastest pace in 2025, offering a bright spot amid broader European uncertainty. Bank of Japan prepares for rate hike, leaves timing flexible. The BOJ suggested interest rate increases may come later in 2025, pointing to rising inflation and resilient wage trends as key triggers. Japanese manufacturing activity contracts again. Factory output slipped back into decline in July following recent trade uncertainty and weak global demand. Japan's economy likely avoided recession in Q2. Economists estimate a modest 0.4% annualized GDP growth for April-June, driven by consumer spending and a recovery in external demand. Nippon Steel forecast full-year loss after $1.3 billion Q1 shortfall. The steelmaker expects a 40 billion yen loss for the fiscal year, citing integration costs from its US Steel acquisition. Trading houses pivot to food business for stability. Mitsui, Marubeni, and Itochu offset commodity weakness with stronger profits in food operations, validating diversification strategies. Japan raises minimum wage in major jump. A labor ministry panel recommends a 6% wage hike to approximately 1,118 yen per hour, the largest since 2002, aligning with PM Ishiba's longer-term goal of 1,500 yen by decade end. Japan voices concern over Myanmar election detentions. Tokyo expressed deep worries over Myanmar's planned elections proceeding without releasing political detainees like Aung San Suu Kyi, calling for democratic restoration. UK secures baseline 10% US tariff amid trade shakeup. As the US tariff regime came into effect on August 1st, the UK avoided steep duties, receiving a baseline 10% rate thanks to last-minute negotiations with Washington. Royal Rail Plan gains momentum with Germany-linked talks. Under the so-called Kensington Treaty, UK and EU officials are exploring a direct rail connection between London and German cities like Berlin and Frankfurt, with passport e-gate access reinstated for UK citizens in Germany from August. US raises Canadian tariffs from 25% to 35% immediately. President Trump signed an executive order increasing tariffs on Canadian goods from 25% to 35% effective August 1st. The move was partly justified, citing fentanyl trafficking concerns, prompting strong criticism from Canadian PM Carney. Carney regrets decision woes export diversification. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney expressed disappointment over the tariff hike, pledging to protect domestic jobs and diversity export markets to reduce U.S. dependency. Meanwhile, Ontario Premier called for retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports. Bank of Canada holds rate steady amid tariff fallout. The Bank of Canada left its policy rate at 2.75%, noting reduced risk of global trade war but signaling potential rate cuts if economic conditions deteriorate further. Canadian inflation remains around 2% while job growth stays solid. Israel evacuates diplomatic staff from UAE. Israel pulled most of its embassy personnel and family members from the UAE following a heightened travel warning, citing credible threats from Iran-backed militias Hamas, Hezbollah, and global jihad targeting Israeli individuals. Gulf economies outlook: GDP surge ahead. Gulf nations are forecast to witness robust growth in 2025, UAE at 4.8% and Saudi Arabia at 3.8%, driven by higher oil output, infrastructure projects, and tourism, with inflation expected to remain modest. UAE fuel prices adjusted for August. Effective August 1st, petrol prices saw a slight decrease while diesel prices rose sharply, reflecting global oil trends and monthly index adjustments by the Fuel Price Committee. Middle East equity markets pull back after historic highs. Dubai's main index fell roughly 0.8% after reaching a 17.5-year high as investors took profits ahead of looming US tariff deadlines, even while regional earnings remained solid. Slump in Fujairah bunker fuel sales continues. Fujairah Port's 2025 H1 bunker fuel sales dropped 5% YOY as ships avoided Gulf routes amid geopolitical tensions and weaker demand. Indian equity markets dip on US tariff announcement. Stock markets opened slightly lower. The Nifty 50 fell 0.14% and Sensex down 0.15% by mid-morning as India prepared for the start of 25% tariffs on exports by the US effective August 1st. However, sentiment recovered later, closing with modest losses as investors speculated on possible trade relief. Rupee stabilizes after near all-time low. The Indian rupee bounced back to rupees 87.3 per USD following Bloomberg Bank of India intervention and short covering, recovering from a Thursday low of rupees 87.74 as export tariffs loomed large. New wind turbine norms favor domestic suppliers. India's Ministry of Renewable Energy issued regulations mandating local sourcing for critical wind turbine components and requiring data ownership within India aimed at strengthening domestic manufacturing. Sugar production forecast to jump 18% in 2025-26. The Indian Sugar Mills Association projects output rising to 34.9 million tons as expanded cultivation in monsoon-fed regions boosts supply. Overseas brokerage Jane Street under regulatory probe. Indian authorities revealed Jane Street is non-cooperating with an ongoing investigation related to trading irregularities, raising concerns about financial oversight. Probe ordered in real estate tycoon Mami missing case. 4 police officers in Kozhikode are under departmental investigation for laxity during initial inquiries in the disappearance of businessman Mohammed Attur. A 60-day report has been mandated. England win toss, India make changes for 5th test. England won the toss at the Oval and opted to bowl under overcast skies. India made several changes, resting Jasprit Bumrah and Rishabh Pant, bringing in Dhruva Jurel behind the stumps as they tried to level the series 2-2 in the final test. Sunil Gavaskar critiques Yashasvi Jaiswal. Former India captain Gavaskar criticized Jaiswal's early dismissal on day one, saying he lacked confidence and clarity, raising doubts about his consistency in overseas conditions. Arshdeep Singh misses out on Test debut. Young left-arm pacer Arshdeep Singh, though named in the squad, did not play in the final Test. Still, he appeared in good spirits by posing with his family in London, reaffirming selectors' belief in his long-term prospects. New India football coach appointed. Khalid Jamil was named head coach of the Indian men's football team, becoming the first Indian to hold the position in 13 years. His appointment signals a renewed focus on domestic strategic leadership. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching. We will be back with more news tomorrow. Good night.